Hello and shalom, everyone, and welcome to another session of Yoga Readers. Today, we will be finishing our current reading of Yoga Agenda for Women by Geeta Iyengar. For those of you joining us today for the first time, we are Yoga Readers, a global online community of people who are interested in reading about yoga and discussing yoga together. We meet about once in 2 weeks, so twice a month in Zoom. And the recordings of these sessions are shared on YouTube. And during the reading period, I send out inspirational quotes and sometimes even extra material about the subject that comes up in the reading. Sometimes we have polls or questionnaires, and it's a lovely community. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Agi Wittich. I'm located in Jerusalem, Israel. I'm both a teacher of Iyengar Yoga, a practitioner of Iyengar Yoga, and also a scholar of yoga. I did my PhD at the Hebrew University here in Jerusalem. I studied Sanskrit and Tamil and researched specifically Iyengar Yoga and women, so this book is really close to my heart. And today we are dealing with last chapters of this book that Geeta Iyengar named At the Threshold of Peace, which I find completely beautiful. So before we get started, I'll tell you how this session will go. We will start by a summary of what we have read, and then we'll move on to close reading. We will reread just small sections, and then I'll add some notes, my own notes and thoughts about what we've read. And we'll have time for a group discussion, which is never recorded, in order to allow people to express themselves freely. And then we will conclude and talk about our next upcoming sessions and our next reading material. And I'm very happy to see all of you here. So before I get to the summary, I'd like to hear from you, and you can either open your mic or just write it briefly in the chat. What aspect of Shavasana do you find most challenging? Or it could be in the past tense as well. It could be something that you have overcome, or this challenge can be something that is still challenging you, or something that you maybe dislike. Now, my students tend to say that it's either too short or too long, but I think there are other aspects as well. And of course, it has nothing to do with the actual time duration. It could be 3 minutes, and 3 minutes could feel too long for some people. Even 1 minute could be too long. And then 3 minutes could feel short. 5, 10 minutes could feel really, really short, like flying by. And there are other aspects. If the teacher is constantly talking and giving instructions, or if the teacher is silent, both could be disturbing or challenging. So here is my question to you. What aspect of Shavasana is challenging for you, or was challenging? In the chat, or you can open your mic. Feel free. No challenge at all at Shavasana? It just comes and you float and you're there and you're fine? How interesting. So it's just my students and my colleagues that struggle with Shavasana.
For me, Shavasana, I always find it, as compared to the other asanas, a little difficult to get into. You have to relax in it. I find it difficult to relax, perhaps. The rest of the day is waiting or something like that. So there's just this restlessness. But once I'm in it, then I'm okay. Then I come out of it and I feel very good about it. But there are certain classes where the teacher says, okay, now the class is over and now you guys have to go into Shavasana for minimum this much time. And I know I should do that, but I think I'm still dependent on a teacher to tell me, lie down, and then a few instructions, and then the Shavasana really comes for me. And if I don't have a teacher, this particular pose is just so difficult for me to actually get into it. I'm just like, my mind is just tossing and turning the whole time. And I don't even know if I make it to the minimum time that the teacher tells me to make it through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you put a timer on, Pragya, when you're on your own?
No, I haven't done that because I feel so discouraged. So I've tried to let myself get into that relaxed frame of mind or body. And it's just like I can rarely get, especially if I know that it's when the teacher says, okay, 6 to 10 minutes. If it's like that, then I'm just like, okay, is it over yet? But then, yes, if I have a longer time, there have been instances when I know that I have the next 20 minutes free, 30 minutes free. And then I think then it's slightly easier because then I'm like, okay, even if I fall asleep accidentally, I still have that much time. So I think maybe just the time constraint makes me feel like, okay, what if I fall asleep? Or is this enough time for me to get into that frame, that mental frame or that physical state? So yeah, that keeps playing it on my mind.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share their current or past challenges in Shavasana? I can tell you that for me, oh yes, please.
Oh, Agi, can you hear me? The
Yes.
internet is a little bit sort of on and off, so I'm not sure. I think it definitely has changed over time that at the moment I find it more easy just to be in Shavasana and to be more present. Of course, the mind wanders at times, but especially when there's an early morning practice. If it's a bit more physically intense practice, like I think I shared with you before, we do back bends on Fridays, Shavasana comes easier. If I'm more practicing, maybe thinking about what I'm going to teach, or sort of also keeping other things in mind while I practice, it's maybe a little bit harder to get into deep Shavasana. Yeah, it's just a couple of things, I guess. Every Shavasana is different every time, every day of the year. So there's, I guess, so many things that are happening, but just a couple of comments.
That's a very interesting point that you're making, that it's different each time we
That's it.
approach it. And sometimes it is like colored by the practice that came before it. Yeah, thank you for that. And I seen the chat, Ruth wrote that for her quietening, the chattering in her mind, her thoughts coming and going is the challenging part in Shavasana. Yeah. I just wanted to share that for me, Shavasana always came very easily until I was pregnant. And then postpartum, it was very difficult because the body felt different and I was filled with emotions. And every time I just stopped, I felt like an overflooding of emotions. After October the 7th, I think it took me a few months to get back into my Shavasana. It was very difficult to lie on my back on the floor. It was difficult to just be. And again, a flooding of thoughts and a lot of emotions. So for me, I think the challenges were in emotional periods in my life to get that stillness. Okay, so let's dive into what Geeta Iyengar taught us in these parts. She starts by teaching us about mudra, and I hope we can all get used to the word mudra and not mudra, which is not correct. So mudra and shavasana and dhyana, which you can just call meditation because she does it as well. So in this first part, she talks about the innermost dimensions of practice. Now, even though mudra are the actions, we actually do something on the outside, but the interesting happenings are happening on the inside. Some of the mudras you can just explain, but it's hard to show. And these inner dimensions of our practice lead us to meditative awareness, we can call it. And they serve as an essential bridge from what we could call an external physical practice, though we should never limit asana as external or just physical, because we also talked about how asana are a pathway or a door to the more inner sheath of our being through the koshas. And these practices connect us to more subtle realms of consciousness and move us towards yoga's goal of self-realization and meditation. So Geeta Iyengar discusses Maha Mudra, which is 3 mudras practiced in an asana that is called Maha Mudra, which resembles Janu Shirshasana in many ways. And then she discusses Shanmukhi Mudra. I sent you an elaboration, a bigger textual piece explaining about that mudra. And she sees these as preparatory techniques for the practice of pranayama, so moving the senses inward. And these mudras are seals. So a mudra is a seal that redirect energy inwards, and they teach us our sensory control or withdrawal of the senses. And what I really like in this part, when she teaches Maha Mudra, the three seals or locks, she touches upon what women can gain from practicing this elaborate, perhaps advanced practice. And she discusses the therapeutic benefits for menstruation, what to do in pregnancy, and then what to do postpartum and menopause. So it's not that you should not practice pranayama, it's that you should know how to practice it. And then Shanmukhi Mudra, I was very interested in hearing from you. How do you sense it? How is your experience with it? Some have never practiced it because it's considered to be advanced, and I'm not sure that all teachers are teaching it. I've heard a teacher in London when I was there visiting, and he said, we should always practice Shanmukhi Mudra before practicing pranayama. Like that's a must. And that he heard that once in Pune, but that's the first time I heard it. I've never heard it in Israel or from teachers around the world who are visiting here and teaching pranayama. So just that connection that Geeta does and that teacher did in London, but I don't know how it is in your parts of the world. So Shanmukhi Mudra is like an important step towards pranayama. And then she goes on discussing Shavasana, could be translated as corpse pose. And she does discuss the relation between Shavasana being as like a small death. But she does say that it's the most difficult posture to master, even though it looks quite simple, just lie on the floor. And it's, of course, not just lying on the floor, because she meticulously explains to us how should we lie on the floor with each part and how it should react. But as you look at Shavasana from the outside, it looks like the easiest pose ever, like no effort. But then still, Geeta says, well, it's the most difficult posture to attain, to master. And she covers in her instructions everything from the precise placement of the shoulder blade to the subtle relaxation of the facial tissues. And this reveals really the depth of this posture that some could mistakenly think that it's the easiest. Or even, I could say, sometimes students are so tired when they get to Shavasana that they just turn off. I mean, they should turn off their senses, but in a class, they should listen to their teacher. And sometimes they just doze off or they fall asleep and they miss this part of the teaching of what to do in Shavasana. And maybe us too, as practitioners, when we go into Shavasana, like, do we follow these instructions? Do we tell ourselves how to do it? Does it just happen because we're so practiced in it? I don't know. That's a question. So for Geeta, she says Shavasana is an experience of death in a living state. And this allows a sort of rejuvenate body of the nervous system and, of course, our mind. So we should get really refreshed after practicing Shavasana. And then she moves into discussing dhyana or meditation, where she, similarly to what Geeta Iyengar does in Tree of Yoga and Light on Life that we read before, she dispels the common misconception that meditation is about transcending the body or doing something that is non-physical. She actually says that in meditation, we have to remember that our body is our vehicle. And that's what establishes the physical stability. That's the foundation for our spiritual journey. And then again, there are very precise instructions for proper meditation posture, for the sensory withdrawal, and the mental steadiness that needs to happen. And then when it happens, it creates this practical framework. So for what otherwise could be this abstract philosophical concept of just sitting with a still mind, she actually tells us how this should happen. So I was very happy with reading these bits. And now I remember that I also sent you a bigger article about Shavasana as well. So what about, and one about Shavasana. And I just wanted to start with the quote about Shavasana. She writes, Geeta Iyengar writes, Shavasana is like an experience of death in a living state. For a brief period, the body, the mind, and the speech are still. The asana is also called mrittasana because one experiences the gross and subtle body as a corpse. Unlike in the dead body, however, the soul exists. It exists in a pure state. So it could feel very morbid when we just talk about the things like that. But I think that her courage to encourage us to touch upon death while we are living is her way of not turning away from maybe one of our biggest fears, which is dying. And we need that courage to practice and to really exhale and then to stop our breath. We need to be willing to let go of even from the will to live. In a very positive way, I have to say, this is nothing to do with wanting to stop living. Iyengar used to say that when he had a student with depression, first they need to build up the ego in order to be able to let go of the ego. So you need to have a very strong will to live in order to go into these practices. It's not that, oh, I don't mind, so then I can do kumbhaka and so on. No, it's not that. It's from a healthy and steady and stable place to go into these places. Okay, so let's go into the reading. And we do today as we usually do. Who wants to read? In yellow, we are reading out of Mudra and Shavasana. Okay, who is going first?
Okay. Mudra and Shavasana. Although most of the sections have been divided according to asana and pranayama, this section is devoted to Maha Mudra, Shanmukhi Mudra, and Shavasana. Shavasana is the common denominator for both asana and pranayama. In Shavasana, one achieves relaxation of the body, quiet respiration, tranquility of the nervous system, mental poise, and peace of mind. All these are essential to pranayama and dhyana. Maha Mudra is lifting the spine with support and at control over contraction of the abdominal organs. Shanmukhi Mudra teaches withdrawal of the senses. The eyes and the ears are closed outwardly, but they are kept attentive and watchful inwardly. This draws one away from the world and takes one deep into the inner self. All these three practices are preparatory for pranayama. The sadhaka learns to relax, to gain mastery of the elementary bandhas, and to control the sense organs. She learns to look inwards. Shanmukhi Mudra and Shavasana may be practiced at any time. If practiced before going into bed, they are ideal for sound sleep.
Thank you. And I'm just going forward to our next bit, which is about pranayama. But before that, I wanted to ask, have you noticed what are the two adaptations that Geeta Iyengar recommends in Shavasana? Since you've already read it, I thought about asking you. So my question is, what are the adaptations that Geeta Iyengar recommends in Shavasana and for what purpose? So I'll give you a hint.
Blanket, like a
Yes.
yeah, so a blanket under the chest.
Yes.
I need to do that myself because I've got breathing issues, so I do need to use that blanket often underneath my chest.
Yeah, so she says for a cold, for cough, or for asthma, place a pillow or a folded blanket under the head and the back. Okay, so under the chest, as you said. Yeah, so not flat on the floor. And someone for the other adjustment, it also has to do with, I should say, what props she recommends. I remember in my teacher's assessment, I had to demonstrate this second adjustment, how to use this prop. What prop is used in Shavasana think about preparation to pranayama. Think about pratyahara. What prop helps us for
Something over the eye.
what is that? That's right.
So
So
that open there in the eye. Yeah.
yes, and she recommends a wrap or a bandage at the head if someone has difficulty relaxing the eyes. And we see that sometimes the eyes are fluttering in Shavasana. We should put something over the eyes. I heard that if someone is not relaxed, we should adjust the posture and see what's disturbing the person. But if any of you have experience with the bandage around the eyes, it could be interesting to hear from you. I have my own experience with it, but it's really recommended here, like for creating more calmness in the eyes. They are selling today, aren't they, these eye masks, warm or cold, to soothe the eyes and so on. So it's there in the Iyengar tradition since the 80s, isn't it? Okay, so these were my questions. And then I wanted to say about the bits we haven't read now, because there's not enough time. Women issues, how this part about the mudra refers to women's issues. And I'm going to tell you the page numbers if you want to write it down and then reread these bits. So in pages 286 to 287, Geeta explains how Maha Mudra helps correct displacement of the uterus, cures leukorrhea, and tones the abdominal organs. And then in page 219, the description of Shanmukhi Mudra, she explains how it's beneficial for women's psychological well-being, since this mudra removes irritation, tension, and loss of temper. Then she goes on, pages 291, 293, she gives detailed guidelines for proper placement of the body in Shavasana. And that also has to do with women's bodies. She has these small cues to it. And in 295, she discusses how Shavasana helps the body and the mind to recuperate after long and serious illness, particularly beneficial for women managing chronic conditions. And she also says in page 307, she has these specific recommendations for adapting pranayama during menstruation, explaining how certain techniques remove fatigue and check the menstrual overflow. Let's read the hints and suggestions for the practice of pranayama, and then I'll just jump into these special recommendations for women. You don't need to read the Sanskrit, though, even though it's partially marked.
Okay. The beginning. The yogi, having perfected himself in the asanas, should practice pranayama according to the instructions of a guru, with his senses under control and observing throughout a nutritious and moderate diet. Some simple variations of pranayama are described in this book, with elaborate hints and techniques. Study these carefully before commencing practice to avoid injury. As the lion, the elephant, and the tiger are tamed gradually, so also breath has to be tamed. Otherwise, it can be harmful to the sadhaka. Practice pranayama systematically and regularly. Carefully note the subtleties described below in your practice. First, a beginner should master the asanas and gain control over the body. 4 to 6 months practice of asanas is essential before starting pranayama. Those sadhakas who are slow to grasp the technique of the asanas may take a little longer.
So just think, was it the same for you? 4 to 6 months before learning pranayama. I think today many teachers would say that's too early. Depends on the students. Okay. Regulation of breath.
One should learn to inhale, exhale, and retain the breath slowly by regulating it. Thus, one attains success. The breath should not be fast and forceful. In the beginning stage of pranayama, one should not be too strict with the duration of the retention of breath by keeping a watch on time. For many months or even years, one has to train the body to be perfectly balanced and steady as described above, and one has to train the flow of breath to be soft, smooth, and quiet. This means that one has to improve the quality of breath. This in turn leads to the extension of the breath without exertion, and thus one achieves quantity in its length. It is more important and beneficial to do a few cycles correctly than to be strict with duration. The breath should be steady, long, and resonant, and it should have a rhythm. If the rhythm or the sound changes, it is an indication that one's capacity is over. Then pranayama should be discontinued for that day, as otherwise it is harmful. If you exert beyond your capacity, the brain cells will be taut and tension is created throughout the body. If the volume of sound is increased, the brain gets irritated. These are the indications of overexertion in pranayama. Thus, one has to learn to balance both quality and quantity in pranayama. The sadhaka should first understand her limits for pranayama by the following method. An exhalation lasting 10 seconds, one may continue with this cycle for, say, 5 minutes. Later, when one finds that the breath is shorter than 10 seconds and that the sound of inhalation and exhalation has also changed, it means that one has to stop pranayama for that day. It is a warning signal. Exertion in pranayama is harmful to the lungs and the heart. One should not be out of breath after pranayama practices. The minimum number of cycles to be practiced has been mentioned in the various pranayama given in chapter 14. Though this may differ slightly according to individual capacity, some people can easily do more cycles than others without exerting, while others may find even the given minimum too much. One should know that capacity can only be increased by training the lungs through practice. Therefore, first of all, one should attain steadiness in the minimum number of cycles, paying attention to maintaining their quality and quantity. The duration of inhalation and exhalation should be in the beginning, however, it may vary, and this variation has to be gradually corrected. Suppose you inhale for 10 seconds and for 8 seconds, then you have to adjust the inhalation to 9 seconds and the exhalation also to 9 seconds with practice. Some people have a longer inhalation and some exhalation. One has to shorten whichever is the longer to bring the other process to the same duration. After the two have become equal, increase the duration of inhalation and exhalation, adding even time for both. See that there is no tension in the forehead, the neck, the throat, and the chest. When coming to the end of pranayam, in the sitting posture, the right hand, which is used for regulating the breath, should be brought down from the nostrils after the completion of the last cycle and should be placed on the knee in Gyan Mudra. The head, which is bent down in Jalandhar Bandha, should not be lifted up. And the eyes also should not be opened suddenly. After completion of pranayama, do Shavasana for at least 5 minutes. The poise and quietness gained during pranayama is thus retained. Menstruation.
For a moment, because this was a lot of information and I'm sure you have read it before, but was there something here that was new to you? Anyone? Maybe the idea of shortening one breath and making the other longer, or the idea of making them equal? Or is this the way you are practicing and teaching or have been taught to practice pranayama?
Yeah, this is pretty much how I have learned, yeah. Yeah, like trying to equalize the inhalation and exhalation. Like we would be given instructions to first observe like a longer inhalation and a shorter exhale, playing around with the breath. And then we're told you can now try to equalize both the inhalation and exhalation. So a lot of just working with the breath, longer inhalation, longer exhalation, and then eventually move to this.
Mhm. Okay. So now let's move on to the instructions for women. Menstruation. Would you like to continue, Pragyan, or someone else?
If there's nobody else, I can continue. But if there's somebody else, then that's
Okay, go for it.
okay. Menstruation. If one is tired during the menstrual period, Ujjayi Pranayam 1 and Viloma Pranayam 1 and 2 are beneficial as they remove fatigue. They also check the menstrual flow. Young girls should practice Ujjayi Pranayam 1 and 2 and Viloma Pranayam 1 and 2 in adolescence, as these promote physical strength, emotional stability, and mental peace. The other varieties of pranayama may be practiced according to the time at one's disposal. It is advisable to practice Surya Bhedana Pranayama and Nari Shodhana Pranayama after the age of 20, but not before, as this would make a young person look prematurely old. Pregnancy. During pregnancy, all the various types of pranayama may be practiced. Ujjayi Pranayama 1 and Viloma Pranayama 1 and 2 are particularly helpful for relaxation, removing tension, and for making delivery easy. For further details, refer to chapter 9 and to chapter
10, 12, and 9. And then
After delivery, one should start with the practice of Ujjayi Pranayama 1 and Viloma Pranayama 1 and 2. 3 months after delivery, one may practice all the types of pranayama described in this course.
And last is menopause.
The practice of Ujjayi Pranayama 1 and 2, Viloma Pranayama 1 and 2, and Surya Bhedana Pranayama is soothing to the nerves and calms the mind. Avoid Ujjayi Pranayama 2 and Nari Shodhana Pranayama if you are subject to hot flushes. When one becomes strong and healthy, gradually all the different types of pranayama which have been described in this book may be practiced.
Thank you. So I'm always interested in what she says about how women should practice pranayama, and just the idea that with the practice of pranayama, one can relieve fatigue during menstruation is great, because I think it's more clear how certain asanas can relieve cramps and backache and maybe even a headache. But the idea that you can control the levels of energy in the body, giving an answer to tiredness during menstruation and also irritation, is great. Pranayama doesn't require a lot of effort, doesn't require a lot of space, and doesn't require you to be very energetic in the morning. So if you get up a bit earlier and you just lie down on days of menstruation and practice Ujjayi 1, Viloma 1 and 2, and then a bit of Shavasana to start your day, I think that's a great way to balance out a menstrual day for some. And then I just collected some notes about the bits that she wrote about pranayama, that Ujjayi 1, Viloma 1 and 2 are also described as techniques that cultivate physical resilience, emotional stability, and mental tranquility, and that are very helpful for adolescent girls. They are also beneficial during pregnancy since they calm and ease delivery. And they are also recommended after childbirth. And I think that just taking this trio of pranayamas, one is observing the breath, right? Vilo 1 is inhaling and stopping, and then Vilo exhaling and stopping. So using this trio of pranayamas, which are taught at the beginning of teaching pranayama and also lying on the back, is very, very beneficial. And whoever is not practicing them yet daily or weekly, it's a strong recommendation from me and from Geeta Ji to incorporate them into your practice. And I also thought that this was quite interesting that she says not to practice Surya Bedi Shodhana before the age of 20 because it will make us appear older. I don't know, is that true? We're just old and that's okay to practice these. So I've never heard that before. And I wonder why and from where it is coming from. Okay, and then for Nadi Shodhana, she says don't practice it if you're younger than 20, but also don't do it if you suffer from hot flashes. So something with Nadi Shodhana perhaps creates this irritation for some people. But then for hot flashes, she also says don't practice Ujjayi 2, which is the elongation of exhalation, which is interesting for me because exhalation should be cooling and letting go. And I would think that hot flashes would go out from the system if you extend the exhalation, but I should ask Rita Keller about it, perhaps. And then she goes into dhyana. So let's read the last bit. I also wanted to read this, but it's no time. So in page 309, there are the benefits of correct practice, which is not just pranayama practice, but feel that it's about the whole practice of yoga. She says that the brain is becoming cooler after pranayama practice, the mind becomes calm, the body feels light, and the chest feels strong. So an overall recommendation to practice. And then another quote from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. We have to move on, and I'll just show you the last part of the book. I think it's mixed emotions for me. I'm very happy that we got to the end of the book. Like it feels like a sense of achievement, but I'm also a bit sad because I like this book so much. Someone else wants to read The Nature of Meditation? It's not long and no Sanskrit terminology. And if there is, I'll help you out. So just 2 pages from the book. Okay, I'll read it out. The nature of meditation. In chapter 3, an account of what meditation is has been given. Hence, repetition is not necessary. The experience is beyond description. It has to be personally experienced. Sugar has to be tasted to understand its sweetness, and its sweetness cannot be explained in words. Here, an attempt shall be made to help the sadhaka taste the sweetness of meditation or experience that which cannot be described in words. The body is often considered to be an insightful factor in the practice of meditation. This is an erroneous view. Our body is our vahana, our vehicle. Without this vehicle, we cannot experience anything. It is the body that carries us to our destruction or to self-realization. A vehicle that does not function well cannot take its owner anywhere. So also we are sometimes at the crossroads in our journey when our vehicle, the body, does not work properly. When the body is weak, shaky, or in pain, meditation is impossible, and we have first to put it right by the practice of asana and pranayama before proceeding further in the path of yoga. A sound and healthy body is thus the very first stage in meditation. It is the beginning of the journey. The end of the journey is realization of the Supreme. In between are stopping places, mental development, intellectual growth, self-knowledge. Each stage has to be perfected before the final goal is reached. Just as during a journey, we see various scenes which are stored in memory and new experiences await in the future. Likewise, the journey of self-realization comprises a constant search from bodily perfection to the ultimate goal. During the course of the journey, all minute details have to be observed with an introspective eye. The first 4 of the 8 limbs of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama, are conductive to the inseparable form, the art of meditation. They are preparatory stages. The next 2 limbs, pratyahara and dharana, are directly and intimately connected with meditation, leading onwards to samadhi. Yet this stage, meditation, defies description. It is a philosophy beyond words, which has to be experienced personally. Meditation is not bound by place and time. It can be experienced anytime, anywhere. The preparation for a literary pursuit, too, has its beginning with the alphabet. Meditation also must have its humble beginning, which finally leads to supreme joy. The first 4 limbs of yoga develop such qualities as health, cleanliness, moral discipline, stability, courage, mental peace, and concentration. The inner and outer cleanliness leads the sadhaka towards a spiritual quest. The ground is prepared for dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. A safe technique for meditation is given below. It should be practiced every day for 5 to 10 minutes with a peaceful frame of mind. Later, the duration should be increased. The time for meditation should be the same every day. Early morning is the best. Meditation should be practiced before pranayama. This is because at the time of starting, the mind is fresh and free from anxieties. If pranayama is done first, by then the asana may irk the muscles and the nerves and disturb a serene state. When pranayama is done after meditation, attention is focused on the flow and the rhythm of breath, and one forgets the body pain. Pranayama should follow immediately after meditation. She writes, when the mind is still, respiration is still and calm, and the body becomes stable and quiet, along with the emotions. The mind is the controller and the king of the senses. Prana is the king of the mind, and rhythm is the king of the rhythm is the sound nada of inner peace. That is the supreme stage in which one gets the answer to the question raised by Arjuna to Lord Krishna, the Gita. Gita, verse 54. What is the mark of one who is stable of mind, who is merged in supreme consciousness, O Lord. How does the stable-minded speak, sit, and walk? When the senses are disciplined, the mind becomes stable. Such a mind becomes free from anger, passion, infatuation, and fear. It remains in the state of sorrows as well as of pleasures, and makes one free from confusion, delusion, undeterminate reason, and egoism. The tranquility of mind fixes the discriminating intellect firmly in the supreme and remains constantly awake in that state and attains the Brahmic state. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Discussion. Ruth writes in the chat that it's very beautiful and useful for our modern times. Yes, I agree. Okay, so I'll stop the recording for now and we will discuss a bit and then we will resume and I will let you know when is our next session. Could be a special session with a special senior Iyengar yoga teacher. And I'll discuss the community gathering that we will have in our next reading. So thank you all for this interesting chance to discuss and share your experiences with Shavasana, with Pranayama, and with your thoughts about what we have read in this chapter. There is no additional reading for the next, and we will have concluding session for Yoga Jam for Women. I call these sessions communal gathering. We had one before commencing the reading of this book where I explained a bit about what this book is about, what are the subjects that are discussed in it, and how we will read the book throughout 4 months. And now it is time to conclude our journey. How was it for you? What did you feel? We started this in April. So what happened throughout April, May, June, July, and even August? So 5 months eventually. And I really need to hear from your experience to learn about how to do the next book. Is the pace too slow or too quick? Am I sending out enough materials for you to follow, or is it an overflow? Is it too much? Would you like it to have a different format? I mean, everything in Yoga Readers came from a communication with the readers. I had this idea, but I didn't know how to go about it. And then suggestions came to have Zoom sessions, so we have them, and to have a Facebook group, so we have that as well. And we have a newsletter because you just asked for one. So I'm really here open for suggestions, and I have an idea about our next book, but you can also write to me and let me know what are your thoughts, what you would like to read. I'm getting a lot of requests to reread Light on Life, which is the first book that we have read. I have that in mind because then we were about 200 or 300 members, and today we have passed 1,700 members of Yoga Readers, so we have expanded a lot. Maybe because of Geeta's book, Yoga Jam for Women, but maybe just these things take time and they grow. And it's possible that many members have not read Light on Life. That's not going to be our next read, but I am thinking about rereading it in the near future. So if you have any suggestions about what book should come next, please let me know. I'm available on WhatsApp, Facebook, and email, and through my website. So I will let you know about our next session, the communal gathering. I usually tend to let you vote on it. So it's not just when it suits me, but you will have 5 or 6 options to choose from. And then we'll go by what suits you the most. It will be during September, probably. And what else? I am planning a special session with a senior Iyengar yoga teacher who has written books about Iyengar yoga and women, and who has known Geeta for many years and can tell us perhaps about her own experience with her. And I will let you know about the details in the upcoming days. I'm very excited about that as well. And between two books, we will have pause to digest Yoga Gem for Women. And for those of you who are still reading it by bits, you'll have time to finish that book and prepare for our next book. And when I'll announce it, you'll have enough time to get it, whatever book that will be. If we'll go by what I'm planning, I guess you already have that book. Okay. So thank you very much. I also wanted to thank the Chai supporters, the people who decided to support my work. There is a lot of research and preparatory work that goes into these sessions. I hope you feel that as well. And some of you decided to support my work through buying me a digital cup of chai. And some of you that made a bigger support through supporting my yoga research. And some of you have also supported my yoga sadhana. So it's in my website. I'll send you again the link if you'd like to support. Some of the supporters are here in this session today, so I'm very happy with that as well. And thank you very much. We'll keep in touch.